So I just saw it's text. We're good to go. Thank you. I appreciate those of you putting it in the chat. In case you don't know me, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I like doing these LinkedIn Lives as a way to teach you how to follow process and procedures to lead to federal success or success in the federal market. And we're going to talk about that today. Should I sell into the federal market? But before we do, I just want to ask, as we go along, if you're feeling generous, put your company name and your core competency into the chat. Lets me know who's out there and what you guys do, and I just get to remember it. So we're going to start. We're going to start right now. I think we're good to go. Question I get asked a lot is, should I sell into the federal market? Or I keep getting told, maybe you're familiar with this, right? Is should I sell into the local market, the commercial, the federal? Should I do all three? Do I need to get experience first in commercial and then come over to federal? I hear federal is so complex. Some people will tell you that you need to get a piece of the $1 trillion pie or the $10 trillion pie or the bazillion, gazillion, trillion pie, whatever it is. It's some big dollar volume. And the reality is that's best equated to trying to get 1% of the Chinese market. Oh, if I could just get 1% of the China market, then I'm going to make a ton of money. Well, that's not how business works. And so business works from your first dollar to your first $100 to your first 100,000 to your first million. It works its way up. Don't worry about the trillions. They're a long way off. You might want to succeed, right? But you don't know where to start. Should I start locally, geographically in my area? Is going into the federal too hard? The reality is people do a lot of remote stuff these days. And then the last thing is you might be thinking to yourself that when I speak to different experts like me or anybody else, right? They all got opinions, but what opinion is right? Well, I guarantee you my opinion is the right one for you for today, right? Your job is to listen to the different people that are out there. All of our jobs is to do this, right? But to listen to a lot of people giving us input and then make our decisions on what we're going to do based on what they're recommending. Me personally, I'm focused on building small businesses that deliver generational wealth. I have no interest in making you an overnight millionaire. I have no interest in telling you can get a piece of the $1 billion or $1 trillion piece of the pie. What I want to do is to help small businesses grow in local communities around the country as a way to make this country better, right? Without going too far into that thing. But this idea of how can you make this country better? How can you make communities better? I really believe it's small businesses who can make the country better. And so if I can do my one little part, which is help people like you develop and build generational wealth through small businesses, then that's a huge success. That's what motivates me. Another thing that I'm really focused on is how can I get your firm to grow to $10 million to sustain that local community? And what I mean by sustaining it is if you grow a $10 million company, you're getting $10 million a year revenue from wherever, you're hiring people who are local to you. Oklahoma, California, Alaska, it doesn't matter. You're generally hiring people locally. And if you're going after federal government jobs, those are generally called primary sector jobs where they pay a little bit more, have a little bit more benefits. The people in your company will spend their money locally, which means they're going to go to dry cleaning more often, go to pizza more often, things like that, right? Restaurants more often. And that means you'll be able to help create secondary sector jobs because that money is coming in and not going into some stock market type place where the money goes all around the world. It goes into your local community. And that's something I'm very interested in. And so that's part of what drives me towards, should you sell into the federal market? Well, the federal market is really a lot of money out there. And if I can help you bring it back in to your local community, then I'm doing you good. And I'm doing kind of the community a service as well. So today is going to be about, should you be selling into the federal market, not how do you be successful. I do all sorts of videos on how can you be successful selling into the federal market. But the topic I'd like to explore today is, should I sell into the federal market? Primarily the audience is people who are still trying to decide that. But I think you should also realize that if you're more experienced as a small business or even a larger business in the tens of millions of dollar range, you can be taking away nuggets of what I say when I describe the market and why I advocate for one direction or another for small businesses as they get started. So keep this in mind. This topic, by the way, came from somebody had reached out to me yesterday and was asking exactly this. I'm just getting started. What do I do? And so, should you sell into the federal market is the question I wanted to answer for him. Okay, so let's talk about just ways you can get paid as a person, right? For work, etc. So one way you can get paid for the work you do is as an employee or a perceived employee. And what I mean by that is W-2 or 1099 in a day-to-day job where you're expected to be that same place regularly. It doesn't matter to me whether you're getting paid on a W-2 or a 1099 approach. It's the same thing. You got a job with that company. The second way you can make money as a person, right, in America is a 1099 gig. I call it gig work or gig. The gig economy is what they're calling it now, but it's been around forever. You're not actually in there. You're doing, a great example is a bookkeeper might do 10 hours for this company a month, 10 hours for this one, 10 hours for that. And so you're making money, but you're still just doing bookkeeping, and you're still just really just trying to work a 40-hour work week. You just happen to be having, let's say, 5 or 10 bosses, companies. And then the third way you make money is through your own company. So imagine that bookkeeper saying, you know what, I want to build a business. I don't want to just make money on bookkeeping. I want to build a business on bookkeeping where I'm hiring bookkeepers in, I'm training them. I'm training junior ones, I'm hiring senior ones, and I'm beginning to build up a sustainable company that can get $1 million in revenue, can get $10 million in revenue. Just a side track, yesterday I was talking to this person, and they said that, look, it's not all about the money, right? I just want to get in and do a good job. And I said, well, okay, my first thought for you is forgive yourself for wanting to make money. It's okay to make money. And I'm going to do a whole speech on this, but when you're a business, the business's job is to make money. When you're a nonprofit, it's a whole different scenario. Your job is not to make money and make profit. That is the job of a business. It doesn't mean the fact that you're going to make money is what is your guiding values and your guiding principles. No, those are separate, and they guide your efforts to make money. But it's okay to make money. That's the whole point of a business, and that's how you measure the business. If you have a business, a company, and you say, well, how many nonprofit hours or how many volunteer hours are we doing every week? That's how we're going to measure the success of our business. Well, at some point, you can be doing hundreds of hours of volunteer work, but never make $1. Your business goes out of business. On the flip side, make money, then enable your staff to be able to do volunteer hours, things like that. So just keep it in mind that it's okay to make money. It doesn't have to be the thing that drives you, but it is the purpose of the business. So those are the 3 types of ways that we could make money. And obviously, we're talking today about your own company. If you start a company, and for those of you who are working at a company, you can understand the business owner's mission and goals, and so you can help them this way. But those are the 3 ways to make money. There's markets you can be in, and that's what we're really talking about, right? I said the federal market. You also have the state and local. Sometimes you hear it, SLED, state and local, and education. So I'm separating them out. Federal, state, and local, because those are both governments, all 3 of them, federal, state, local governments, and then education and commercial. So federal, state, and local, education, and commercial are the typical ways you hear people talk about what market are you in. The 5th one, and the one that I advocate, is a hybrid approach on the federal side. By the way, I'll give you the answer to should I sell to the federal government. The answer is yes, except for very, very few of you, and I'm guessing it's not you. But the hybrid approach is federal and commercial. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but let's just break down what is federal. So we're not miscommunicating here or misunderstanding each other. So the federal market is pretty straightforward. You're doing work in the executive branch, legislative branch, or the judicial branch. Those are the 3 branches of our government. The executive branch is where the 90% of the federal employees and federal agencies are, right? Congress and justice or judicial branch are very small amount of money compared to executive branch. So you got the President of the United States and all the agencies, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Education, Defense, Homeland Security, all those fall under the President of the United States, under the Executive Office of the President. And so in the federal side, that's what we mean when we say federal market. You're getting your money, you're doing business with the federal agencies. State and local, it's the exact same thing, except for at the state level, California, Alaska, Nevada, whatever. Local is at the community level, the county level, little towns, big cities, et cetera. That's what local means. So state, there's 50 with a little plus when you add in Puerto Rico and some other things that should be states but aren't states kind of thing. But then education is education. It really is an industry, but people call it a market sometimes. I consider it more of an industry. So you have the education, the school system, grammar school, high school, colleges, etc. And then the last one is commercial, and that's everybody who's not government or education, right? The reason I actually don't consider education a market in this sense is because education can either be public sector, which is run by the state or the local localities, or it can be private, right? So if it can be run by either one of those, like commercial, then it's on its own. Anyways, let's talk about hybrid though. Hybrid is going after federal business, where the idea is you're going after an agency and you're pursuing that, but you want to add a commercial element to it. The commercial element comes from businesses that support the federal agencies. So prime contractors is the first place you can think about it. When you're a subcontractor, you're kind of not in the federal market anymore. You're in the commercial market. If you sit there and subcontract under Booz Allen, your customer is Booz Allen. It's not the government. You know, the end user is the government. Of course, you're supporting the whole contract, the mission, but you have a contract with this commercial company. So as you think about doing commercial business, if you subcontract, you're instantly in commercial and federal. Now, if you subcontract under a prime contractor that has true commercial business, so let's say Booz Allen was supporting the financial industry, banks, etc. Well, if you're a subcontractor in them and you want to begin to expand, you still stick with Booz Allen, where you have that tight relationship on the federal side of the house, the federal market. But now you can begin to say, hey, I can support you on the financial industry, which has nothing to do with the federal government, but it's still Booz now as the anchor. And so instead of going way off to left field, trying to work directly for Bank of America, and you're in there selling to them, if you stick through subcontracting and work with Booz Allen, you're still doing commercial business. You're still tying your revenue generation to multiple industries or sectors, but you're keeping it really in this hybrid approach of federal and commercial. I talk a lot more later about it. So this is just a brief introduction of the markets that you might look at. So remember the markets: federal government, federal market, right? State and local. Those two are government: federal, state, and local. And then education sector, education market. Those are the schools. And then the last one is commercial, any random commercial. And that could be in the financial industry, that could be in the manufacturing, that could be in the healthcare side of the house, helping hospitals all around the country, whatever it is, commercial side, right? And then the last one is the one I really want you to take away if you're in the federal space, is think to yourself a hybrid approach of federal and commercial, and the commercial being the one criteria for the companies you talk to is they need to be doing federal business themselves. That way you're able to maximize your presence in the federal market. Okay, so there's a lot there, and I'm trying to get better at taking this fire hose of information and bringing it down, right? You got to keep in mind that I've got 30 years of experience bottled up, and I desperately want to share it with you. And I've got to find this balance of kind of turning the spigot down a little bit, so I'm giving you enough that you can absorb. If you've got questions, put it in the comments. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, and ask me questions. So let's talk about that question, right? Should I sell into the federal market? One of the things that amazes me when I hear small businesses or people like you telling me you got advice from some expert that said, hey, go work in the commercial space. You're not ready for federal. That doesn't make any sense at all. First off, if you are no good that you shouldn't be in the federal space, then you shouldn't be in business, right? I mean, not to be brutal here, but if you're not good enough for the feds, why would you be good enough for Bank of America, right? The reality is, are you good enough to do business today anywhere? Good. Now it's just a decision. Do you start state and local? Do you go commercial, education, or federal, right? But your decision is, am I good enough to be running my own company? Am I good enough to be supporting customers? If you're good enough to support customers, federal customers are no different than commercial customers. This is another thing that drives me nuts. It happens in the federal side too. You can't help us. We're DHS. We're different. No, you're not. You're an agency. You got a mission, right? I'm a solution. You got a problem. We come together. It's all good. What you do downstream is different, right? You protect the border. You're the FBI and you do this. You're the Army. You do that. I get it. You have different missions, but my ability to clean your bathrooms doesn't change whether you're in the Army or the Navy. My ability to manage your intricate amount of data, your just this vast amount of data that's coming out of the Army, and drones are pulling down data and all this stuff is no different than my ability to analyze the data in the Department of Education with all the student activity with the Federal Student Aid or Administration, whatever that is, FSA in the Department of Education. But when I'm an expert, I can do that job. Well, if I could do it for the Army and the Department of Education, I can do it for Bank of America, and I can do it for McDonald's or Burger King, right? These are all just businesses that have a need. Can I solve it? The one unique thing about the federal side is people might say, well, do you understand our mission? Well, I can't tell you I totally understand Bank of America's mission until I get in. If you're a new business, and when I say new, I mean like 10 million and less. If you're a new business, you're learning that industry. So you're going through the process of getting experience and developing yourself in your company's expertise. But don't ever let anybody tell you that you don't belong in the financial sector, or you don't belong in the defense sector, or you don't belong here or there. If you belong anywhere, you belong everywhere. You're going to have to get good in order for people to give you contracts. You're going to have to get good and deliver good services and products if you want people to invite you back. But the reality is, if you fit one place, you'll fit everywhere. Now, that said, don't sell everywhere. Focus down tight. Only sell to the Army, right? Only sell to this one command in the Army and get good at that and then begin to grow. But don't undersell yourself that you couldn't do anything. The other thing is about commercial, state, and local and federal is that, and it's funny, I can feel myself take a breath because I get so passionate about this. I hear people sometimes say that the federal sector is complex and it's hard. Those are two totally different terms, right? Complex means there's a lot of parts in there, right? And so there's a lot of things to doing business in the federal government. But the reality is there's a lot of complexity into doing business with Bank of America. If I go in there, they've got their own internal regulations I got to pay attention to. They've got their own acquisition process. If I want to learn how to ride a bike as an adult and I never rode a bike, there's a lot of complexity to it because I've never done that before. Complexity is not a bad thing. It just means what's your learning curve. Hard means is so close to impossible to me. There's no such thing as impossible when it's basic skills like this, right? Any of us can learn to shoot a basketball, right? Not all of us can be as good as Michael Jordan, et cetera, but we can all certainly learn to put a ball in a hoop. That's not hard. It's complex. It takes time, it takes practice. Well, government contracting is the same thing, but in the federal market, you have so many people who want to help you succeed, where I don't believe you have that. I would submit you don't have that as much in any of the other markets. So in the federal market, you have full transparency to a ton of information. If you want to do research in the federal market, you download all sorts of documents and you can study them. You don't really have that availability in the commercial. So it's almost as if it's more complex in the commercial side to learn about your customers than it is in the federal side. Federal side doesn't really want you knocking on the doors till you do your homework, but they make it pretty straightforward to do your homework. The other thing is that there's all sorts of mentors and mentors being both like PTACs and counselors like that, SBDC, but there's also tons of people who will give you guidance in the federal space. But there's also teammates, massive amount, tens of thousands of potential teammates that you can learn from. You can do on-the-job training. On the commercial side, state and local, and all these other places, it actually is much more competitive, like cutthroat competitive, where in the federal space, it's more competitive is what we call it. Some days you're my competitor, sometimes you're my teammate, right? It seems like we tend to work a lot more together as companies, especially small businesses in the federal side, than in the commercial. We're a little bit more at each other's throat. We're very close with our information. I don't want to share it, right? I might lose my opportunity here. So in the federal side, teammates are a great way to begin to learn how to do federal contracting, but even for large businesses. And here I'm talking about like $1 billion business. I've seen them come in and work with smalls that are doing $10 or $20 million a year, let's say, at a particular agency. And the large sees the value of getting mentored by the teammate, of getting in the door, meeting strategic contacts. The difference between $1 billion firm and you is that they might ramp up faster, but they're still getting in there. So, and then just checking my time there. So anyways, my bullet that I was trying to drive forward to you is that you can definitely get started in the federal market. Don't ever let anybody say you can't get started in the federal market. I would say don't start in college, start in, first grade. But no matter whether commercial or federal, you're still going to start in first grade and work your way up. As long as you do that, you're going to develop the experience and the skills necessary to grow and be more successful. Okay, so sticking on here again, this is all about, should I sell to the federal market? And of course, yes. And so I wanted to use this two last examples I'm going to use today. One is somebody I just talked to recently, and one is myself on how I got started and made my first million, my first 10 million, et cetera. I want to tell you that quick story, but I want to tell you the story about a guy named B. I'm just going to call him B. And so this person has spent 20 years in the Navy, right? They just retired. They have an extensive amount of personal and professional experience in the federal space, in the Navy. For years, they've been dreaming about, hey, I really want to start my own business and go down that path, right? Compared to getting out of the Navy and getting another job, I want to start my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur. So they've been dreaming about this for a while. And then this person has a strong expertise, subject matter expertise in cybersecurity. They've been spending 20 years in this space. In fact, they have a secondary subject matter expertise, if you will, on Fort Gordon, Georgia, on the Cyber Center of Excellence down there, or one of the Defense Cyber Centers of Excellence. And so they not only know the Navy, but they actually know cybersecurity as it relates to the other services and the intelligence community, et cetera. So they're coming out of the Navy, starting a brand new business and getting started, and they have the same fears that somebody who doesn't have, let's say, 20 years in the Navy. We all kind of have those same fears when we start something new. We're nervous. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? And with this person, I was giving them the same guidance I'm giving you. Not only, yes, can you succeed in the federal market for this person, obviously, but the second thing is that in here, this person actively should be only going after the federal market, only after the Navy for the next few years, because eventually many of the people he might have known in leadership positions begin to retire and he doesn't have visibility back to them or access. Hey, let's get coffee, that kind of stuff. And so tightening down into the Navy, he can build a $10 million company over the next 3 to 5 years. That's annual service revenue, right? Just by focusing in there. And somebody with this level of competency and past performance as an individual will be able to build a business. Now, the key for him, as I was saying, like I've said to many people often, is go find teammates, right? I just said it before, in the federal sector, it's really easy to find teammates and get partners. But when this person starts getting in, their ability to grow $1 million company in the next 12 months is right there. This is a predictable thing. And this comes back to a question I have for you, right? How do you know whether you should truly sell in the federal market? And this goes back to that question I said about anybody can do it except this one category of people. And really is, do you have experience? Do you have any level of experience that makes you a subject matter expert in what you want to sell, right? And I tend to be talking about professional services. There's 3 types of work: manufacturing, construction, and professional services is everything else. And so in this world, I'm in particular talking about professional services, but it goes with construction as well. Do you have experience? Are you a great painter that you know that you can go in, get a gig, do the work, and shine, which then gives you a referral to the next one, et cetera. If you know that, then of course I think you should be able to start a business if that's what you want to do. And I definitely think you should be in the federal market if that's what you want to do, because you will find all sorts of teammates that you can begin to grow your company on there. So the only question I ever say is the statement I have about no, you shouldn't sell to the federal market, but really you shouldn't sell to anybody, is if you have no experience. If you have no experience, then you have no business being in business. Doesn't mean you can't get to that stage. Go find somebody, get mentored, and then come back a year from now with experience. Go, now I'm going to start a business. Go volunteer with somebody, volunteer with the GovCon Chamber. Okay, so I was going to tell you how I made my first 10 million as I moved forward. And I just wanted to talk about it, not this long story, but just briefly, so it might relate to you. My first company when I came out was a network engineering company. And so if I reverse engineer it, how did I start that company? It was IT services network engineering. So network engineering is the infrastructure of everything that is not your actual computer. So anything beyond your computer was what I dealt with, right? And my experience before I started that company was I was in the Army and I did infantry stuff, and you go look at that as in the Airborne Rangers in the beginning of my career. But the last couple of years, I really focused on IT because that was the future back then. And so I was able to get certified Novell engineer, which was the thing at the time. And it was a unique certification. So I built experience on the job just as an employee of the Army as a network engineer. From there, I came out of the Army and I got a job with a large company, GDIT. And for 6 months, I worked for them. It didn't last long because I knew as an entrepreneur, and then it turned out I couldn't sit in a job when I was an entrepreneur. But so I worked with them as a network engineer. And then I got my first customer where really you could have called it a job, right? I had a friend once that had a business and his wife kept saying he had a job for like 3 or 4 years. She kept saying he had a job with the customer. I'm like, no, that's what business is. In the beginning, it looks like a job, but it's really not. We're in there and we're building relationships, et cetera. But so I got out of GDIT, started my company, and basically I was a one-person company doing 40 hours a week for this customer. And in there, I was able to then begin. I actually began my first million all in that one customer because I would just see needs they have. And this ties it back to something I said is I was supporting their network needs for their own company to keep their company running. But they were a federal contractor supporting the Air Force and DoD bases, et cetera. They were in environmental consulting or something. But I was able to keep getting more and more projects with them. And I would say, hey, let me throw one of my team behind me. I'll come forward and do this job, and I'll mentor and monitor them so that you never have to worry about it. And I'm always here, right? That's the nature of a small business owner and small business is you always have access to the ownership. Anyways, long story short, you can see I took my subject matter expertise and I drove into getting a job in a federal focused company and then began to get mentored by them to go after federal business. So fire hose of information in 20-25 minutes. I'm going to look down to see if I got any questions in here. If you found this valuable, give it a thumbs up. Right? If somebody tells you need to go into a different market compared to the federal market, don't listen to them. What you need to do is to just get experienced in business. And the way you do that is to pick a market and start working. I'm very excited to have you in the federal market. If you want to learn more about government contracting, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on all the different places I'm at. I'm a horrible social media promoter here, but I am very good at government contracting, and there's a lot of content out there that will help you on your journey. And it's almost everything that you could have access to is on our chamber site or YouTube channels or LinkedIn. So those are the 3 platforms for us. Okay, I think we're good to go. I want you to remember one last thing. Government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you the next time.